Business news from the Capital Region. This is Washington Business Report with ABC7 national correspondent Rebecca Cooper.
Welcome to our fresh look at business and finance in the Washington region. Rebecca is off today. Coming up on today's show, we'll talk sports business, from the Washington Redskins hiring lobbyists to help them with their identity crisis to the World Cup costing billions. Is someone selling out, and who's cashing in? Plus, do you have a summer intern working for you? We're going to talk about the etiquette and the laws surrounding their work. And it's Father's Day. Some of the region's top CEOs say Dad helped get them where they are today. But first, a look at some of the business headlines from this past week. Amazon has launched its version of a music streaming service, Amazon Prime Music. Prime subscribers can now access millions of songs, pre-made playlists, and can download music to offline devices. The new service is a signal to some investors that Amazon's continued hefty spending is being invested in new services. Twitter's chief operating officer is stepping down as second in charge at the corporation. He will stay on as an employee of Twitter. Analysts believe his decision to step down is a result of the company struggling to attract new users. Twitter stock down 42% from last year. Protests against D.C.'s proposed tax on yoga studios and gyms continue. The 5.75% sales tax increase on fitness centers in the district is up for a vote on Tuesday. It's faced heavy scrutiny from fitness professionals and health advocates alike. Owners of local fitness businesses say the tax will hurt not only their profits, but the quality of health of those living in D.C. Starbucks is offering a charge with no strings attached. The Coffee King announced this week it is launching wireless charging in its stores. Customers will be able to charge their devices simply by placing them on tabletops. No wires or cables necessary. Starbucks believes this will encourage customers to stick around in the stores longer, making them more likely to buy products. Once every 4 years, global productivity drops for a month as nations from around the world compete in soccer's World Cup. And since the Cup began this week, we wanted to talk about the billions of dollars at play and who, at the end of the contest, will end up yelling "Goal!" Joining us today is John Ourand, media reporter for the Sports Business Journal. John, thanks for coming in. You know, we were talking about this a lot in the newsroom this week. The world is soccer crazed. The United States, maybe yes, maybe no.
I think that's still an open question. There's been talk since the 1970s about whether or not soccer is going to finally take hold here. And people always take a look at kids playing soccer. Well, they play soccer as kids, and then in high school they've been tending to drop the sport. The changing demographics of the country, though, becoming more Hispanic and bringing more people in, and TV ratings that NBC is finding out for the Premier League and that ESPN and Univision have found for the World Cup suggests that things are changing and is starting to take hold more in the U.S.
And talk to me about the Thursday opener, the first game, Brazil-Croatia. What were the numbers like there? Were people tuning in mass? This was a 4 p.m. game on a Thursday. It
was a 4 p.m. game on a Thursday, and ESPN had numbers that was about 50% up over what they were in South Africa, which is to be expected because of the different time zones. More people are going to be watching in Rio than they were in South Africa. I think one of the things that was interesting, though, in some of the biggest cities, in Washington D.C., in New York City, the share of people watching the soccer game was identical to the share of people watching Game 3 of the NBA Finals that exact same night. So there really is just a bunch of people that are really watching soccer more and more now.
So if you're one of the big media companies who spent billions of dollars buying these rights, you're looking at that as certainly a good sign that there's money to be made in soccer.
Right, and you're seeing more and more bets being placed on soccer. ESPN just last month made a big bet on Major League Soccer, saying that signing a contract for the next 8 years, even though Major League Soccer really doesn't get good TV ratings, but they're making a bet that it's going to grow along with growth that they've seen in the World Cup.
So when we talk about, is it worth having the World Cup somewhere? Brazil spent $11 billion trying to get ready for this World Cup. They've seen protests at home. We're looking at, certainly there's a lot of money spent also by media companies to buy the television rights, billions and billions of dollars in advertising and expenses. Is the World Cup or any of these big events worth that kind of money?
Well, that's the open question. One of the funny things is Sochi. There were all these stories about how it wasn't ready and these protests, and then as soon as the Olympic Games started, you didn't hear those stories anymore. So I'm curious to see what happens in Brazil, to see if those stories continue through the month-long tournament, or whether they're the stories that were really preceding the games.
Because we asked that because the D.C. area is one of the U.S. cities being talked about as the possible choice by the U.S.O.C. for the 2024 Summer Games. And the question that you then have to ask is it worth the billions of dollars of taxpayer money to build stadiums, to build Olympic villages? If I'm a major city, why do I want the World Cup, or why do I want the Olympics?
Well, it's a political hot potato, which is why the U.S.O.C. has been very secretive about what cities are actually doing it. And I would suggest that D.C. is a really a long shot to get it for a variety of reasons. But the reason you would want it is, let's take a look at RFK. That whole development there has been dilapidated for decades. If all of a sudden we get an Olympic bid, we're going to be forced to build that up. Take a look at Metro. I hear complaints about Metro every single day. That's something that in a rail system would be built around an Olympic Games bid. So it would cost a lot of money, but it really builds up an infrastructure around the city that most cities need. Let's
switch gears to the Redskins. A couple of Redskins things happened this week. We know that Daniel Snyder retained a lobbyist and has been working with a crisis PR firm over the name and this name change controversy. You also had a group of Native Americans who made a pretty high-profile ad buy during the NBA Finals to put an ad out opposing the name of the Redskins. This is getting to be a pretty big, high-dollar fight now.
It is. I'm from D.C., so I'm used to this issue bubbling up and going away. This doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon. And I would suggest that Dan Snyder hiring the lobbyist, him hiring a crisis PR director, suggests that he's not ready to give up the name, and that nothing's going to happen anytime soon, and that this public furor to give up the name is something that he's really going to continue to try to fight.
Snyder's digging in. He's been adamant that he's not going to change the name. Yeah, and certainly when you're a billionaire and your games continue to sell out, your TV ratings are strong, your merchandise sales are good, you're in a pretty good financial position to be able to make that statement. If you're on the other side, I guess they're trying to leverage public pressure and lawmakers to try to force them to sell. If this goes on for years, does that at some point hurt the Redskins brand, the Washington Football Club brand, to the point where they go, you know what, fine, we're going to just change the name?
Maybe it hurts it outside of Washington, D.C., but I would suggest inside D.C., people still respect the Redskins brand and like the Redskins brand. The only way that I see Dan Snyder or the NFL forcing Dan Snyder to change a name is if they get hit in the wallet. If the senators that signed that are able to pass a bill that cuts the NFL's tax breaks, then they'll have to do it. If merchandise sales fall because people don't want to be seen wearing wearing a slur, then that's something that will force them to sell the team. But until that happens, it's gonna remain the same, I think.
The name of the team is a high dollar bet. It would be like Nike deciding we're going to call ourselves something else.
It is, but there's within D.C. you had the Washington Bullets to go to the Washington Wizards. There is precedent, and I think that also one of the things that people are looking at is the NBA's response to Donald Sterling in L.A. and how they came out forcefully to just get this owner, this racist owner, out of the league, and they did it very quickly and very forcefully. And the opponents to the name are hoping that Roger Goodell and the NFL exert the same sort of influence on Daniel Snyder.
John Ourand from the Sports Business Journal, thanks so much for joining us here on the Washington Business Report. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Coming up, summer interns, the etiquette, the rules, and how to make an internship a win-win relationship. We bring in the experts next.